From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the news at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ayotunde Balogun.
Hello and welcome tonight. Senate passes 2026 Electoral Amendment Bill, allows use of EC8A forms when electronic transmission fails. House of Representatives aligns with Senate version of Electoral Bill after rowdy session and walkout. Civil society group asks President Tinubu to reject Electoral Act amendment in the interest of Nigerians. And tributes pour in as U.S. civil rights leader Jesse Jackson dies at 84.
And on business, global oil prices dip over 2% as progress in Iran-U.S. nuclear talks eases tension.
On sports news tonight, Nigeria Super Falcons to face Cameroon's indomitable Lionesses in two friendlies ahead of the Women's Cup of Nations.
And from the nation's capital, President Tinubu seeks support of religious and traditional leaders to drive health reforms to grassroots.
The Senate has modified Clause 28 of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill to reduce the notice of election requirements from 360 to 300 days before an election, down from the 360-day period in the earlier version of the bill. This amendment is intended to give the electoral umpire, INEC, more flexibility in fixing election dates without being constrained by the longer timeline. The amendment was effected after Senator Kwame Bamidele raised a motion on the rescission and recommittal of the Electoral Act 2022 Repeal and Enactment Bill of 2026. Our National Assembly correspondent Gloria Mizoke reports.
Lawmakers in the upper chamber reconvened for plenary for the second time during a 4-week break over the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The Senate dissolves into the Committee of the Whole, where a motion for a rescission and recommittal of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill is raised by the Senate leader.
The Muslim communities had reached out to INEC to say that the proposed date of February 2027, during which time they had fixed the presidential and National Assembly general elections, would conflict with the Ramadan exercise for 2027.
With the new provision, the presidential and National Assembly elections may now be conducted in December 2026 or January 2027.
Those in support of that clause, the state want to form part of the bill, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The motion also highlighted discrepancies discovered in the long title and several clauses of the bill, including clauses 6, 9, 10, 22, 23, 28, 29, 32, 42, 47, 51, 60, 62, 64, 65, 73, 77, 86, 87, 89, 93, and 143.
Of this motion has moved and seconded, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
However, proceedings in the Senate momentarily stalled when at Clause 60, Senator Einaya Abaribe raised a point of order, drawing immediate attention on the floor. Following the intervention, a back and forth ensued before plenary immediately moved into a closed-door session.
Everything we're doing now is a decision.
Re-emerging, the upper chamber went into a rowdy session as the Senate resumed open consideration of the bill, with a demand for division over Clause 60 in a point of order.
Order 72. 1. Any senator may challenge the opinion of the president by claiming a division.
That call, backed by opposition lawmakers, appeared to unsettle the majority caucus, triggering protests across the floor. Senator Abaribe is then urged to formally move his motion.
What Senator Abaribe is saying is that in the event that the electronic transmission fails, we should leave it at that. We should not put a proviso that the primary source of collation, which is the EC8A, should be taken to the next center.
I don't see the big deal in what we're talking about. What Abaribe is saying is that there should be electronic transmission of results, which is also contained in this subsection. But the primary thing to do is to fill the form EC8A.
During the division, the Senate President directed senators who supported the caveat to stand. He then asked those opposed to the caveat to rise.
Can you rise and raise your hand? What you see those who are saying, if the transmission or communication fails, that the election stops there.
The Electoral Amendment Bill is subsequently passed.
It will be moved and seconded that this bill be now read a third time. Those in support say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. I also want to thank those who voted for the proviso to remain, that you have saved democracy.
Now, separately, following a motion sponsored by Senator Sani Musa on the brutal killing of over 50 persons in Borgu local government area of Niger State, the Senate has mandated the Committee on Defense, Army, Air Force, Police Affairs and the NIA to conduct a joint assessment of the situation in the region and report back within 4 weeks. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umejoke, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has aligned with the Senate on the electronic transmission of election results with the option of the signed form EC8A at polling units. This process was largely concluded by the majority All Progressives Congress and some opposition lawmakers after several of the opposition legislators staged a walkout during the consideration of the bill. Our National Assembly correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
The emergency plenary session of the House of Representatives commences with a motion from the chairman of the Committee on Rules and Business.
Pursuant to Order 9, Rule 1.
The motion seeks to recommit the Electoral Act Amendment Bill following the submission of the Conference Committee of the Senate and House of Representatives to harmonize the two versions of the bill passed by both chambers. Some lawmakers oppose the recommittal of the bill, which leads to a rowdy session.
Those against you say nay. That is how it is. Mr. Speaker, sir.
The rowdiness ensues, prompting a closed-door session.
It's an executive session.
Almost 2 hours later, plenary resumes and the House moves into the Committee of the Whole, chaired by the Deputy Speaker, to reconsider the report on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
Open.
The consideration commences, but is immediately disrupted, as lawmakers say they are not in possession of copies of the amendments and want the Deputy Speaker to read every clause.
Having gone through it with you time and again, I put the question, clause 1 to 10. Clause 11 to 20. Clause 21 to 30. Point of order. 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 Honorable colleagues. Yes. So sit down. Let's start from one.
restored, but not for long, as it's time for consideration of Clause 60, subsection 3, which deals with the electronic transmission of results.
Clause 60. Clause 61. Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Okay. What do you want to amend? Okay, sit and amend. Go and amend.
Amendments are proposed but rejected by the majority. A division is called for members to vote openly.
Transmission shall be done after the prescribed from initiate A has been signed and stand by the presiding officer. Okay. Countersigned by the polling unit agent at the polling units, and stop at that and remove the proviso based on what you have said. If dispute has arisen, I will ask that a motion be moved for the division of the House.
The rejections prompt the opposition to stage a walkout with chants against the majority All Progressives Congress. The chants are continued outside the chamber as they head straight to brief the press on their decision.
We want to clearly register our position and the test, with particularly Section 60, which has to do with electronic transmission. Our position is that elections shall and should be transmitted electronically. Yes. We are against any clause that will give room for any manipulation or rigging or leeway for any untoward act.
Following the walkout by the minority leader, Representative Kingsley Chinda, Representative Kelechi Nwoko is appointed as the interim minority leader. Consideration of the bill resumes, and Clause 60, Sub 3 on the electronic transmission of results is approved, with the option of Form EC8A in the case of communication failure during electronic transmission.
Honorable colleagues, we have gone through the business of today in this special section, and I want to thank you for the deliberation. Everything that happened here is normally how Parliament operates. Sometimes we disagree to agree. I want to thank you for staying put and pushing this nation forward. What you have done today, you have not done for yourselves, you have done for the growth of democracy.
Plenary is then adjourned till the 24th of February for the conclusion of the 2026 budget defense process by various committees. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Among the conversations regarding the Electoral Act bill, and the country director of Action Aid Nigeria, Mr. Andrew Mamedu, is appealing to President Bola Tinubu to reject the amended Electoral Act by the National Assembly. Speaking to Channels Television, Mr. Mamedu accused the lawmakers of being selfish in their decision to reject the real-time transmission of election results.
These people, they forget that posterity would always record and judge these things. And it's not about just speaking morality, but it's about what is right for our country. And we are due for real-time electronic transmission of results without any condition. You should hear let me quote what the leader of the opposition said in the House of Representatives. He said, our position is that elections should be transmitted electronically. He declared that we are against any clause that would give room for micromanipulation, for rigging, or leeway for any upward acts. So even the Senate, the House of Rep members, some senators, they recognize that this will give room for the rigging. And if we go to court, what then happens? So our reaction is very clear, very simple, very clear. We stand seriously against what they have done, and they have taken a side against the people of Nigeria, and Nigerians would respond accordingly. We know that time is not on our side. We would have asked the president to act. However, we are not so sure that even the Senate and the House of Rep are not doing the bidding of a higher authority. Of course, in this instance, might be the president. Yes, the lawmakers are independent. The legislators are independent of the executive. But this time around, we think the father of the country, the president, should act in the interest of the country and get them to deal with it. And if they refuse, as civil society, we have other options that we will fall back on to see how we would go about in handling and dealing with these issues. Of course, all of this within the legal framework of the country, the constitution of our country.
In part two, after the break, a DSS witness provides detailed account of 2022 Owa church attack planning and execution. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you have just joined us, you're watching the News at 10 on Channels Television, broadcasting live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Senate passes 2026 Electoral Amendment Bill, allows use of EC8A forms when electronic transmission fails. House of Representatives aligns with the Senate version of Electoral Bill after rowdy session and walkout. Civil society group asked President Bola Tinubu to reject Electoral Act amendment in the interest of Nigerians. And tributes pour in as U.S. civil rights leader Jesse Jackson dies at 84. A witness of the Department of State Services has given a vivid account of how the June 5th, 2022 terror attack was planned and executed against the St. Francis Catholic Church in Owo, Ondo State. The witness, who gave evidence as prosecution witness number 9 with security code SSI, is a deputy director in charge of terrorism investigation that led the DSS panel that investigated the deadly terror attack against the church. Led in evidence by counsel to the DSS, Ayodeji Adedipe, a senior advocate of Nigeria, the witness claimed that after receipt of information on the terrorism attack, his team was detailed to unravel the perpetrators, the cause of the incident, their sponsors, and any other findings. He adds that after gathering intelligence, the DSS operatives arrested 5 persons in August 2022 in Kogi and Ondo states. He named those arrested as Abdul Malik Omeza, Al Qasim Idris, Jamiu Abdul Malik, Abdul Halim Idris, and Momo Otuho Abubakar. Now, the witness said that preliminary investigation revealed that they are members of Al-Shabaab, an arm of the Islamic State of West African Province, ISWAP, a terrorism organization said to have been outlawed. Revealing how the attack was perfected, the witness told the court that the defendants, under the control of one Odoba, held a meeting on May the 30th, 2022, at Government Secondary School, Ogaminana in Kogi State, where the said Odoba passed instructions to them to attack the Catholic Church in Owo. At Tuesday's proceedings, several exhibits by the DSS, comprising DSS investigation report, autopsy report, photograph of the dead ones, a death report signed by Dr. Ayodeji, were admitted as exhibits by Justice Emeka Nwite. Meanwhile, the court has adjourned till February the 18th for cross-examination of the witness by the counsel to the defendants. Let's now head to the nation's capital, and Millicent Walker is standing by to give us the latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Millicent.
It's Tunde, and many thanks. We begin with President Bola Tinubu, who has charged traditional and religious leaders to take central ownership of Nigeria's health reform, stating that no meaningful transformation can thrive without their willful involvement. Speaking at the inaugural National Traditional and Religious Leaders Summit on Health in Abuja, the president describes the community leaders as trusted voices bridging the government and the people. Our correspondent Victoria Longjohn has more.
President Bola Tinubu arrives at the banquet hall of the State House, Abuja, for the inaugural National Traditional and Religious Leaders Summit on Health. Present at the summit is the First Lady of Nigeria, traditional and religious leaders, a host of government officials, health fellows, and other invited guests. The summit is premised on the addition to the Nigeria Health Sector Renewal Compact, signed in December 2023, to include traditional and religious leaders in the nation's health reforms. The First Lady of Nigeria opens the summit with the flag off of the advocacy and awareness campaign for the National Community Food Bank program.
This initiative will be funded through a trust fund by willing private sector partners and well-meaning Nigerians to ensure accountability. The trust fund will be overseen by credible Nigerians, chaired by the Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare.
Thereafter, the traditional and religious leaders took turns to commit to being partners in progress.
We commit to safeguarding the health rights of women, children and adolescents by supporting maternal health, nutrition, adolescent health education, and the prevention of vaccine-preventable diseases.
We are ready to serve and to continually give leadership to Nigeria and to our people. Nigeria is moving forward.
We cannot stand at the margins of health reform. We must stand at the very center.
The Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs wishes to assure you of our full support and commitment to the advancement of Nigerian health sector renewal and reinvestment initiative.
The Coordinating Minister of Health made more commitments to improving reforms in the sector and then presented the 2025 State of the Health Report to the President.
We also call on all Nigerians to embrace the principle of shared responsibility by participating, advocating, contributing to mobilize domestic financing for health for Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the President in his remarks emphasized the need for all parts of government to work together.
We recognize that the sources of our good, saving lives, reducing physical and financial pain, and producing quality health for all Nigerians depend on your leadership. The traditional and religious leaders' summit on health is deliberate and strategic. It is the foundation of a new national alliance for health that we want to foster, because the government cannot achieve the goal of reform alone. We're asking for your partnership.
He then launches the second cohort of the National Health Fellows, charging them to serve with honor, humility, and courage.
You are the driving force that traditional and religious leaders will count on to fulfill the commitment they made today. As the operational backbone of this National Health Alliance, bring structure where systems are weak, data where decisions lack, clarity, and energy where communities seek hope. We are the youthful force behind Nigerian health transformation.
Inducted health fellows begin their assignments and community leaders amplify public health messaging. There are high expectations that the collaborations forged here today will translate into tangible reforms of Nigeria's health sector. From the banquet hall of the Presidential Villa, Victoria Longjon, Channels Television News.
But still at the summit, but on the sidelines, a traditional ruler from the southeast is the Ogbonechendu of Ezemaolo Kingdom, Igwe Lawrence Agubuzu, has appealed to President Bola Tinubu to release the leader of the prescribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, from prison. Speaking at the Health Summit, he also said that there is nothing like a Southern Traditional Rulers Council.
He does not seem to understand the pain in my heart when Nnamdi Kanu is in Sokoto. So sad. The ball stops on the court. Bring this man out. If we don't want him in Nigeria, return him to Kenya or London. quiet. So sad. Please do something about it. The truth of the matter is that there's nothing like Southern Traditional Rulers Council. If you come here at party and you give money to people on that basis, it's not correct. So if you want to deal with us in the southeast. If you have resources for us, give it to us.
Meanwhile, the Publicity Secretary of the Southern Nigerian Traditional Rulers Council, Dr. Eberechukwu Oji, has dismissed the position that the Southern Council does not exist. Well, speaking at the summit as well, he said the council has been active and made up of rulers from across the southern part of Nigeria.
Like the owner said, the Southern Nigerian Traditional Ruler Council is a movement, is a journey, comprising members from across the entire southern part of Nigeria. The owner is our chairman. We have the co-chair, Obi of Ubunugu, from the southeast. We have King Jaja of Opopo, who is from the south-south. And we have eminent traditional rulers from across the southern parts of Nigeria who have come together to advance the cause of the Southern Nigerian Traditional Rulers Council. So let us put it on record and put it on record very clear. The president was part of the inauguration of the Southern Nigerian Traditional Rulers Council. It happened in Owerri, and we have representatives of both the press, the government, and stakeholders in that inauguration. Since that inauguration, the Southern Nigerian Traditional Rulers Council has been moving. We have had our AGM, which happened in Ogun State. We have had several activities together. So please, for the purposes of clearing any doubts, the Southern Nigerian Traditional Rulers Council exists. The Southern Nigerian Traditional Rulers Council is united with traditional rulers and royal fathers from across the entire southern Nigeria, all ably represented here.
Still ahead on the news at 10, global oil prices dip over 2% as progress in Iran-US nuclear talks ease tension. That's all business news. Do join us again. You're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from our Abuja studios. Some company news now. The National Union of Food, Beverage and Tobacco Employees, they've renewed their demand that the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, complies with the federal government's directive suspending enforcement of the ban on alcoholic drinks sold in sachets and PET bottles below 200 milliliters. Well, amid the ongoing protests across Nigeria, the union is calling for the immediate unsealing of affected factories and production lines, warning that continued enforcement could have serious economic consequences.
As early as 7 a.m., workers from several distilleries under the umbrella of the National Union of Food, Beverage and Tobacco Employees assembled outside the Solo, Lagos office of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, for yet another round of protests. Union leaders say the demonstrations have continued for more than 2 weeks. They argue that the ongoing enforcement of the ban on spirit drinks packaged in sachet and PET bottles below 200 milliliters is threatening jobs and livelihoods.
Federal government has given us the hope. Yeah, I saw this woman, the NAFDAC DG, go and open this factory and suspend the ban. So for more than 1 week now, he has not done the need.
The union maintains that factories remain sealed and production lines shut despite what they describe as clear directive from the federal government to halt enforcement.
If DG NAFDAC fail to listen to us, to seal our factories, our machine, the next line of action is going to be bigger than this.
Beyond the immediate impact of distillery workers, the union warns of broader consequences for Nigeria's economy.
Almost about 2.5 trillion annually. That's what federal government is getting from this body. So, if federal government is getting that, and the work has been put on hold by now, by NAFDAC, then how will that 2.5 trillion go into federal government again?
That's why we are saying that the federal government, led by this president, who has a very beautiful team that they have been doing a very good thing, should work on NAFDAC. They should do their job. They are to regulate. They are to bring up policies that will restrict minors from having access to this product.
At the time of filing this report, NAFDAC could not be reached for comments on the latest protest. However, in an earlier statement, the agency said it had not received any official directive instructing it to suspend enforcement of the ban on alcohol in sachet, describing reports of such directives as false and misleading. With protest entering a third week, uncertainty remains over how the standoff will be resolved in the coming days.
Well, that's it from the nation's capital. Over now to Ayotunde for more on the rest of the news at 10. Ayo.
Thank you so much, Millicent. In Zamfara State, Governor Dauda Lawal has pledged that his administration will continue to produce tangible results through the execution of projects on infrastructure in all local government areas to improve the local economy for the residents. He made the promise during the commissioning of projects initiated and executed by his administration in Anka local government.
Lined up for inauguration include the newly reconstructed Emir's Palace, Safe School Anchor, the flag-off of the Anchor Abari Road project, the reconstruction of the local government secretariat, and the Eastberg Community Protection Guard office. In his welcome address, the permanent secretary in the State Ministry of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs, who represented the commissioner, gives a breakdown of the projects executed and their significance to the people of Anchor.
The fact that this administration is also building and remodeling other palaces across the state. At the moment, the palaces of the emirs of Kauran Namoda, Sarkin Kiawa, and that of Moriki, Sarkin Pulme Moriki, are about to be completed and very soon will be commissioned by His Excellency. Similarly, Gusau, Zurmi, Bongoro palaces have been awarded for the remodeling and renovations accordingly. On this note, once again, on behalf of the entire ministry, it is our pleasure to welcome His Excellency to the historic commissioning. I also want to take this spectacular opportunity to congratulate His Royal Highness, the Sarkin Zamfara Anka, and Chairman of the State Council of Chiefs for the commissioning of this magnificent palace.
Inaugurating the projects at various locations, Governor Dauda Lawal stated that they are put in place in fulfillment of his campaign promises and part of efforts to rescue the state from socio-economic decline.
It is my belief that the good people of this emirate, and by extension, Zamfara State, will appreciate this effort through their continued cooperation for the realization of our desired objectives. I therefore call on the Ministry for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs, and indeed the Anchor Emirate, to ensure that adequate measures are taken for maintenance of this structure.
After inaugurating the Anchor Safe School project as well as the flag-off of the Anchor Abari Road, Governor Lawal proceeded to commission the newly reconstructed and furnished Emir of Anchor's Palace. The highlight of the event was the turbaning of Governor Lawal with the traditional title of Gamjin Zamfara in recognition of his contributions to the development of the state.
On His Excellency, and we are sure he is equal to the task.
South Africa is strengthening its corporate and tourism partnership with Nigeria, positioning itself as a strategic destination for business events, investment collaboration, and premium travel experiences. At the high-level corporate engagement in Lagos, diplomats and tourism executives rolled out a structured pitch to Nigerian organizations, inviting them to host their conferences, product launches, and executive meetings in South Africa.
South Africa Tourism is hosting an exclusive diplomatic and corporate engagement, bringing together business leaders, stakeholders, and clients from Nigeria and South Africa. They are blending refined hospitality with premium wine tasting and curated networking sessions. The evening is creating a platform for strategic conversations on growth, market access, and cross-border collaboration. The Acting Consul General of South Africa in Nigeria reaffirms her country's commitment to deepen bilateral ties and ease expansion pathways for Nigerian organizations.
As we gather here today, we are reminded, or should be reminded, of the immense potential, the cooperation, and the knowledge sharing between these two nations. I keep stressing the relationship that is built on a foundation of mutual respect, trust, and a shared commitment towards advancing our African agenda. Over the years, our South African missions in Nigeria have played a pivotal role in fostering these relationships.
Officials of South African tourism describe the sector as a catalyst for trade and investment, emphasizing people-to-people connections as drivers of shared prosperity.
Will not only expand economic opportunities, but it will cement the people-to-people ties that underpin the diplomacy that is shared within our African future.
South African tourism has invited corporate Nigeria as well as those within various interest groups to come and engage with us and see how we can collaborate with them. Importantly, we are saying to corporate Nigeria, work with us to host your conference or your exhibition or your meeting in South Africa.
We're doing these engagements to say South African Rand will make all the experiences that are curated by our DMCs, our tour operators, and our tourist attractions. They make them to be accessible to any country that wants to visit South Africa.
An immersive showcase of South Africa's luxury travel offerings highlights the country's readiness for stronger corporate and tourism exchange as stakeholders project expanded trade, increased investment flows, and deeper economic integration between both nations.
Right, so Will Ibong is standing by to give us the latest in the world of business. What's happening with global oil prices, Will?
Thank you, Ayotunde. I can tell you for a fact that global oil prices fell after Iran reported progress in nuclear talks with the United States, easing fears of fresh conflict. Now, U.S. crude slipped to about $62 a barrel, while Brent dropped near $67. Iran described the Geneva talks as constructive, though tensions remain, with Donald Trump warning of possible action if no deal is reached. Iran also held drills in the Strait of Hormuz, a key global oil route, keeping markets cautious. A recently passed Tax Act introduces a new rent relief measure allowing individuals to deduct 20% of their annual residential rent from taxable income. According to Abdul Kadir Ogungbo, Special Advisor on Taxation and Revenue in Lagos State, the relief applies to annual rents of up to 2.5 million naira, offering some financial breathing room for households. He made the remarks while speaking on Business Morning earlier today.
What the president wants to happen is once a tenant declare, don't forget the route. The route is that you must file your returns. When you file your returns and say that I have paid rent, X amount of rent, 2.5 million below, you are going to get 500,000 relief from that 2.5 million. So, and it means that 20% of your of your rent is now going to be relief for you. That's what it means. Then anything above 500,000 will not be, is capped at 500,000. So to a landlord, landlord is expected to declare the income from rent, and you pay 10% or lower if you have other. If it is only that income, you may be exempted, from that initial payment.
Now to Nigeria's debt market, the federal government plans to raise about 800 billion naira through a February bond auction as borrowing costs remain close to 20%. The Debt Management Office says the auction on February the 23rd will include medium and long-term maturities with settlement set for February the 25th. Analysts say the large issuance highlights government funding needs, but the high yields could keep debt servicing costs elevated in the near term. With that, we're checking with the domestic equities market, which recorded a pullback today as investors begin profit-taking. Ladi Williams tells us more.
Well, after an explosive rally that sent the market soaring more than 4% yesterday, the bulls took a breather today, 0.47%, but nothing compared to that massive gain yesterday, but losing the 190K level, 189,000, still holding 121 trillion. That's for the market cap today. So it snapped a multi-day winning streak and triggering, mild profit taking across, key counters, that we track. But for the gainers chart, we see Associated Bus Company topped the gainers today, followed by Zika's Agro Allied Industry PLC, new kid on the block there, closing up 9.93%. Therefore, the laggards today. We see Mekio, that's topping the counter, down a big 10%, closing at 93 naira 60 kobo. But then we see Zenith Bank, after gaining a big 9.9% gain yesterday, we're seeing a pullback, giving up, most of those gains from yesterday, down big 10%, closing at 18 naira 55 kobo. So investors appear to be locking in gains, following the sharp surge yesterday as momentum cools today. But we'll see if the bulls make a comeback tomorrow.
Fingers crossed, Ladi. Let's see how other major equities around the world perform today. And that's business news. I am Will Ibong. Is back to Ayo for more on the news at 10.
Many thanks, Will. Tributes are pouring in for prominent U.S. civil rights activist Jesse Jackson. Born in 1941 in Greenville, South Carolina, Reverend Jackson became involved in politics at an early age. He rose to prominence in the 1960s as a leader in Martin Luther King Jr.'s Southern Christian Leadership Conference and was with Martin Luther King when he was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, back in 1968. Here's Simon Hughes with more on this and other international news and around the world on 5 from our London studio.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5.
Somebody, I may be on welfare, but I am somebody.
The U.S. civil rights leader Jesse Jackson has died at the age of 84, according to his family. Our father was a servant leader, not only to our family, but to the oppressed, the voiceless, and the overlooked, they said.
Time has come. We must leave racial battleground and come to economic common ground and moral higher ground. America, our time has come.
In the 1960s, Jackson fought for civil rights alongside Martin Luther King Jr., whose daughter remembers Jackson as a gifted negotiator. US President Donald Trump also paid tribute, calling Jackson a force of nature with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. Former Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris described Jackson as one of America's greatest patriots. One of the most prominent politicians in the 80s and 90s, he twice ran for president but failed to get the Democratic nomination. However, he very much paved the way for Barack Obama's nomination in 2008.
I don't think anyone captured the spirit of America like Reverend Jackson, and he took the movement north. I think Jesse Jackson was the link from that generation of King and them all the way to my generation, and then the generation behind me.
A law was passed in Congress to require that all the files that have anything to do with them be released.
Hillary Clinton has accused U.S. President Donald Trump's administration of a cover-up over its handling of files related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
In fact,
the former U.S. Secretary of State was speaking in Berlin, where she attended the annual World Forum. The White House insisted that by releasing the files, they have done more for the victims than Democrats ever have. Millions of files relating to the late paedophile were released by the U.S. Department of Justice earlier this month. At the time, the Deputy Attorney General said 3 million pages were not released.
What we're seeing, I think it's fair to say, is a continuing cover-up by the Trump administration. In fact, when the Attorney General testified last week, it was quite a scene because she refused to answer questions. She diverted attention away from the matters at hand. She refused to look at the survivors. So there's something about this administration's attitude toward this, which I think really leads us to conclude they have something to hide.
Russian and Ukrainian delegations are meeting in Geneva for the latest round of U.S. brokered talks, a week before the 4th anniversary of Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Expectations for a breakthrough remain low, as Moscow has not wavered from its demands for Ukrainian territory. Russia's strikes on Ukraine are continuing on a nightly basis, further damaging the country's already battered power grid as sub-zero temperatures continue. Hours before the delegations met in Switzerland, Moscow carried out a large combined aerial attack on Ukraine, hitting 12 regions with 400 drones and almost 30 missiles. France says it has released an oil tanker suspected of being part of Russia's sanctions-busting shadow fleet after its owner paid a fine. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said the vessel, named Grinch, was leaving French waters on Tuesday, having paid a penalty of several million euros. The tanker was seized by French forces in the Mediterranean in January and then diverted to the port city of Marseille. It had set sail from Murmansk in northern Russia and was flying under a Comoros flag. Moscow's so-called shadow fleet is a clandestine network of tankers used to evade Western sanctions on Russian oil exports by using aged tankers with obscure ownership or insurance. And millions of people around the world are celebrating the start of the Lunar New Year. Here, the famous New Year's parade taking place in Hong Kong. The Lunar New Year, which coincides with the first new moon of the lunar calendar, is a 15-day festival held between the 21st of January and the 20th of February every year. In accordance with the Chinese zodiac, this year marks the year of the fire horse.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks indeed, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. The Super Falcons of Nigeria will face off with the indomitable Lionesses of Cameroon in 2 friendly matches in Yaoundé within the FIFA Women's International window in February and March. The Super Falcons and the Lionesses will clash in the Cameroonian capital on Saturday, February 28th, and then again on Tuesday, March 3rd, as preparations for next month's Cup of Nations. Both teams clashed in a friendly match prior to last year's Cup of Nations, also hosted by Morocco, and the Falcons ran away 2-0 winners at the MKO Abiola Sports Complex, Abeokuta. The Nigeria Women Football League Premiership resumes on Wednesday with match day 8 fixtures after a 4-week break. In Owerri, Heartland Queens will play host to unbeaten Bayelsa Queens in one of the standout fixtures in Group A. Ekiti Queens will take on former champions Rivers Angels in Abeokuta, with both sides firmly in contention for the Super 6. In Lagos, in Nigeria, FC Urobo
Queens will welcome Oshun Babes. Hodiyanam Queens will host Conference Queens in Aba. Sunshine Queens will also be in action against Nasarawa Amazons, with Remo Stars ladies taking on Delta Queens in Ikene. Let's turn to Champions League football now, where Dutch midfielder Noah Lang scored a brace as Galatasaray defeated Juventus 5-2 in a pole-sitting contest in Istanbul this evening, the first leg of a Champions League playoff. PSG edged host Monaco in a 5-goal thriller. The game between Benfica and Real Madrid is still ongoing after the game was delayed for about 10 minutes over racist chants on Brazilian player Vinicius Junior. And Borussia Dortmund defeated Atalanta 2-0. From football now to tennis, where American Coco Gauff has bounced back from her shock early exit in Doha last week with a comfortable victory over Anna Kalinskaya in Dubai earlier today. The American was lost to lucky loser Elisabetta Cociaretto in her opening match in Qatar. Made no much mistake against Kalinskaya, easing through the second round, tie 6-4, 6-4. The Gulf will face Belgian Ellis Mertens in the last 16 of the WTA 1000 event.
It's Gauff who gets through it in the end. Difficulties for both in different ways, but this time it is Gauff who emerges the winner.
And that's your sports news tonight. I am Kelly. Egi gets back to you today.
Many thanks, Kelly. And the main news again. The Senate today passed the 2026 Electoral Amendment Bill, allowing the use of EC8A forms when electronic transmission fails. And the House of Representatives, on its part, aligned with the Senate version of the Electoral Bill after a rowdy session and a walkout by opposition lawmakers. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun. From everyone here, do have a good night.